Good afternoon, Tiffany English. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. I understand that you left the tundra of Chicago and have traveled south to celebrate the upcoming holiday.
I did. I'm in Hilton Head, so right off the beach and getting away from that Chicago winter, even if it is temporary for about a week. So,
Well, I'm for sure jealous. I am super excited to have you here today. For those of our audience who don't know, Tiffany and I are very close friends. We had the pleasure of meeting back in 2014 through a women's networking group that didn't really align with what we were looking to accomplish.
right.
And obviously that worked out well for us because since then we've become the best of friends and professional business partners in a lot of different ways. And so I'm thrilled to be here with you today and to have you be the next woman in tech and money stories in the series that I'm currently hosting. So with that all said, thank you for being here today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit more about Tiffany English.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Women in tech. Oh man, I made it. My name is Tiffany, and I run a business called Bubble Style Event Marketing, which is a event marketing company that specializes in helping people create their own events to promote and market their business. Just a little bit about me. Several years, I want to say 15 plus years in the event space, just doing a variety of in-person events as well as now, while we're in this pandemic, more virtual events. And basically I started in the event world because people always ask me this, like, why events? And it was something as a marketing tool that made sense to get directly in front of your audience, and events seem to do it. People remember you more. They take that experience that they have and connect you, and they make that likability factor. So it's easier to do business. I always told people I was a terrible salesperson. I could never really, do the sales funnel. And Mel, we've talked about this because you do have that, specific sales training. But for me, it was getting to know a person and, just hoping that they liked me and, loosen up and they wanted to do business. And then again and again, that repeat business. And I found events were a great way to do it. They were less of a hassle to really sell yourself, right? You just basically you're showcasing.
Right.
So
I would agree with that 100%. I mean, you were instrumental in opening my eyes to putting on events and switching gears from like what you said, that sales mentality, to being in a more less formal way of meeting people and getting to know them a little bit more
absolutely
casually, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sure. And I found that people that I've met from these events, I would have these relationships for years, as opposed to different, marketing strategies, whether they're on your email list, and how long is that where, you meet them at an event and, 5, 6, 7 years later, you still remember that person or they still remember you. So I just think that they just have more of a longevity as far as marketing. But what I do stress is, sometimes when people think of an event, they think of it as not as a strategic opportunity. So they use it as a casual experience. And what I like to think of events as a strategy. So you never put an event just for the sake of doing it, but what is your end goal? What's your follow-up? What do you want to obtain from that event? And when you start using these events as a strategy, it makes more sense where you're not, you're less stressed about it, you're not losing money from it, and your ROI goes up. So it's important when people say, hey, I want to do an event because everyone else is doing it. And you're like, no, you got to put these goals, specific goals in mind when you do want to launch an event. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time really finalizing, what each event looks like. And it's an experience, right? Everything is different. And I know we've done a lot of events and, a lot of different experiences, but every single event is unique, right? You can't just carbon copy the same thing and expect the same results, right? So,
and I think it has to have a purpose too.
Absolutely. There's
You
no
talked
doubt
about
about it.
strategy, but like at the end of the day, it's like, what is your takeaway from this? What is the purpose of hosting this event? I mean, there's a difference between hosting an event and having a party. And I think the key there
Exactly.
is the strategy and the purpose.
And when you think, and so I always, tell people in specific say that, I do events for business, not, hey, you can't hire me for your wedding.
Right.
Completely different. Your
Imagine
birthday
if you
parties.
have a wedding planner though, how much fun will we have?
I don't think I would have any fun, honestly. Like wedding planners, shout out to the wedding planners, because I tell you, they have the patience and the tenacity to make it work. But I could care less about your china patterns, your napkins, your invitations. Right. But I digress. So events for business makes sense with a specific goal in mind. So yeah, I did that. I actually started my love for events was actually working at Bloomingdale's in their department, and they would have these fashion shows and they would have these vendors and they would have, the bar open, and sales would like quadruple. It just made sense when they created this amazing shopping experience for people that were, happy and in the mood. And, that special events PR was really what I wanted to see in the small business world, saying that, okay, we're not Bloomingdale's, but we can still create that same momentum. Right. And still have those, amazing sales when we do it right. So that's how I really kind of honed in on wanting to do events in the small business entrepreneurial aspect.
Okay. Well, so you mentioned that you've been in the industry for 15 years now, and along the way, at some point, you decided to leave corporate America and start your own business. So tell us a little bit about Velvet Style.
So honestly, I was doing freelancing of work, and doing these shopping events, we would do events for actually nightclubs, nightlife events, and things like that. And I started to meet a ton of people that would say, hey, can you come in and, help us out, do a special promotion? And I launched Velvet Style, and Velvet Style is actually named after my middle name. My middle name is Velvet. Mm-hmm. And then so it's Velvet Style. So it's kind of like putting myself into the event, right? Untraditional, a little bit of quirky, fun. You're going to have a great time. So I really wanted something to really really have me. That's where the name came from. I thought it, honestly, Mel, I thought it'd be easy. Because, I was already doing it and I was like, oh, this is easy. I know people, let's do a business. What people don't get right off the bat when we start business is the other aspects of working for a company. And for me, it was the coworkers, it was the social aspect, it was the routine. So I would work, independently while all of my friends were working 9 to 5 and things like that. And it got so isolating, right? And this was before co-working, right? So I would work at a Panera because they had the great Wi-Fi, they had unlimited coffee. And I started to get caught up with like the employees. Hey, Jan, what's going on? Hey, John, and like,
they're like, you want a job here? Because there's an application.
Just because I crave like that interaction. And it was just so bizarre that like, I was like, man, I need people around, and it wasn't, I need people to, get leads or, get referrals. It's just, I needed my people. Right. So it happened one day, and I don't know if you remember meetup.com, where you can create a group. And I remember creating a group, and initially it was called Chicago Women Entrepreneurs Network. I remember. And it was just for women. It was like, hey, does anyone want to get together? Does anyone want to, chat it up? And we had maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 women, really great event. And after that, I met up with a woman. We decided to have lunch, and lunch turned into dinner because we were just talking about, and not even sales, not even like, what can I do for you? It was just a conversation about maybe like we were venting, or like maybe we were talking about how our family members don't understand that, just because we're working entrepreneurial hours, doesn't mean that we're not working.
Right.
And it was just like a great time because we got each other, So we started to expand that and start doing these like monthly meetups with women just to kind of connect and, just relate to each other. And I started to realize that was the missing link, that social aspect, that pseudo coworker aspect that you still need. We're social creatures, right? We can't independently work by ourselves all the time, right?
All the time, right.
So that turned into Women in Business Connect, which is what it is now. So,
as somebody who is also a fellow entrepreneur, until you've kind of gone out on your own and you're on your own island, you don't really get what it's like to be by yourself. And, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I was given and would give back is that you want to definitely surround yourself with like-minded people that can support you and grow with you and be there along the journey with you of being an entrepreneur, because it's definitely a major roller coaster. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about some of the successes that you've had in your career.
So
I'm sure you've had many over the 15 years. And so
I know.
If there's maybe one or two that you want to highlight, obviously the biggest one for me that I see for you is obviously making the big plunge to leave corporate to start your own business, right? For the folks listening here today, it's not easy. It takes a lot of nerve and a lot of risk,
right,
to make that leap of faith in yourself. So just, share with us some of the successes you've had along the way.
So I know it's a lot. Well, to me, the successes for me have been validation, because, you go out on your own and you're like, this is a great idea, but does anyone else think so?
Other than your mom, other than your parents.
Yeah, right. Shout out to my mom, who was like my first subscriber on my mailing list, and I think she booked she booked a consultation with me, but I got the notification and got all excited. And I'm like, oh, it's my mom.
I remember that too.
But no, the biggest thing is validation. And, I've had some great successes with people coming out and just finding me. And I'm like, I don't know. I've done an event with Wix.com. They're like, hey, we're coming to Chicago. Can you help us with this event? And I'm like, absolutely. I have no idea where you found me from,
right.
But I'll do that. And so certain things, and I think they come right on time, right when you're questioning yourself, right?
Right.
Right if you're like, I don't know, I think I'm going to go back to the traditional role like everybody else.
Right.
And something happens and you're like, no, I'm not like everybody else. So so just different aspects of validation. Several events that I pulled off that I didn't think would happen. And I'll tell you, they'll be like a week before the event and I'll be like, you know what, we should probably pull the plug. This isn't going to turn out right. And it does. And you're like, okay, well, that's great. So yeah, I don't pinpoint one example, but it's a culmination of those successes and validating you. And I think just putting yourself out there, which is something that I want to do more as well. Just putting myself out there, because people find you, they see your work, and you want to book you.
Well, I think along with validation is building that brand.
Yeah, I agree.
Having a reputation and a brand where, I think you said it the other day, you have to be findable. And that kind of stuck with me. And so I think one of the biggest successes that I've been a part of with you is the 2-day virtual summit that you did for WIBC. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah. And I'm sure that was one of those events where you were ready to pull the plug a day beforehand. Because people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes when you do an event. There's a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely. And I'm still reveling off of that. So it's it's still fresh. So and I feel like we're still kind of, still in that momentum of that summit. So the 2-day summit was the successful and surrounded virtual summit for WIBC. And the reason I was so adamant about putting that together is because, you know, WIBC for me was so personal. It was being surrounded about the right people. And I wanted to showcase and highlight that to others that, you know, for others looking in. And, you know, I've been telling you I wanted to do this summit for a while. And it's, you know, it's something that, hey, let's do this. But then when you start planning it, it's a whole other bird, right?
How many times have we attempted to, you know, on scratch paper, put together what we think it would look like? And,
Yes.
and when it turned out to be is 100 times better than I think we could have ever imagined.
Absolutely. And what's funny is what originally, you know, was my thought. It was completely further from where it started.
Mhm.
And like you said, it was great, but I think we changed it like maybe 2 weeks prior. And we had to, you know, I had to contact the speakers and make sure that they were still on board with this new direction. And from what I'm talking about, we wanted to do, we were going to do a recorded, we changed it to live.
Mhm.
And that in itself, you know, pulling together a 2-day live summit virtually is in itself, because, you know, prior to that, you know, I was doing a lot of back-end support, even my role in corporate. 2 hours was the max of it. So you're talking about an all-day summit. I mean, we started from 10 to 5 and then did another day, and it pulled off with amazing speakers. So yeah, it's definitely a success in my book. But just the people involved in that made it what it was. And then, you know, like you mentioned, the behind the scenes, we had several, you know, women from our organization that were helpful. And not only that, but everybody stepped into the role that they were good at. You know what I mean? You know how, like, you know, you try to put somebody in to assist, they kind of really shine as far as, here's what I can, you know, here's my value, here's what I can do. And it went off without a hitch. Well, I'm not going to say that. All right.
I mean, it's pretty close.
We're not going to say it went off without a hitch, but it was a beautiful showcase of what I envisioned, and just 10 times better. And yeah, it's something that really instilled in my mind that, how can I do this for others? How can I help you see what you're meant to do in this event? How can we see what your expertise is in a beautiful way? And some of these speakers, I'm telling you, you need to book these speakers, because, you know, I feel like they weren't the traditional speakers that you're like, oh, you know what, I've seen that, heard that before. Everyone had this great story and impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved being able to curate that. That was in my heart, you know, not even speaking, you know, because, you know, we have people that are professional speakers, but if I can highlight someone's story, that's where my expertise, my stroke of genius is, being able to curate at a unique event that highlights and showcases that work. So yeah, I was very proud of that work.
And it came together amazingly, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And somebody who had the pleasure of attending that virtual summit, I can attest to the quality of the speakers that you had, but even more importantly, the personal stories. I mean, when you have somebody that's a really great storyteller, and they capture the audience, then that really makes you know, event go from, you know, a 1 to a 10. So I think that was very successful on your point.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, and these events, and, you know, now everything is, you know, a lot of things virtual, but think about the webinar where the information is great, but the execution is just like you're falling asleep, or, you know, you're unenthused. So even having great content is not enough, right? Right. And, you know, we talk about this virtual world, and I just want to mention how events in the last 2 years have completely, you know, just changed, right? Because we had to adapt to this new virtual world. And, you know, in the next 2 years, it's going to be even different. So.
Yeah, for sure it will be. So You've obviously had quite a bit of successes along the way. What are some lessons that you've learned?
So it's funny too. I mean, we're still talking about the summit, but I would say ask for help. I think as entrepreneurs, we think we can do it all on our own, and we do ourselves a disservice when we do that because things don't get done. And knowing that there are people out there that are better at things than you are and seeking that out, as well as outsourcing things that you don't have the time and patience for, right? I mean, why spend hours on it when you don't want to? So
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's one of the biggest things going back to, you said, the sales process is kind of know what you're good at, know what you like to do, and then outsource what you don't like and what you're not good at. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
absolutely.
Switching gears. So obviously the whole part of this series is to highlight women in tech and to share their personal stories. But obviously I also want to tie in some sort of a money component because a lot of women that I work with are women in tech. And so everyone has a different piece of advice when it comes to their money. And that can be anything from career advice to personal finance. And so I'd love for you to share with our audience today something that you maybe learned along the way that has been impactful for you, or maybe something that you've learned the hard way that you want to have other folks not make the mistake of doing. So please think about that and share that with us.
So what's been helpful for me is to have that specific goal where your money is going to. So whether you're saving up, because everyone says save money, right? They just say save it, and you need to, and it just sits there, or you don't do it as strategic as you can. So for me, what's worked for me personally is hiding money from myself that I can't easily get to, and having that allocated to certain goals, whether they're short-term and long-term. And for me, just personally, in this landscape of virtual is like working remotely. So having the funds to do that and move around. And so basically having a separate account for that, separate account to save up for whether it's my next travels or my next project, but having that money that I can't easily get to, which is aside from my savings. It's literally just a fund. It says travel fund. So it helps me because, you can still allocate your main money for, uses like, your bills and your day to day, and you still don't touch your savings, because I think that's important. That savings needs to still be there, right? Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think you make a really good point too, especially as two people that live in Chicago. For those of you who aren't familiar with our winters here, they're pretty awful. And so now with the pandemic, a lot of us have the capability of working anywhere or remotely for that matter. And, I would love to pick up and go, down to Florida or California for an extended period of time. But I mean, you make a really good point. You still have bills that are due here in Chicago. You still have rent that's due. You still have to keep your lights on. So unless you're willing to be a nomad, and we have some friends that have decided to, pick up and move around the country without any strings attached. I think it's really smart for you to hide money from yourself for whatever that goal may be, whether it is, short-term travel or just to get out of Dodge in the winter time. So
yeah.
All right. Well, I want to again thank you for being here today. So do you have any takeaways that you would like for us, for our audience, whether that's something to promote Velvet Style or WABC, and tell us where we can find you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start with that. So it's velvetstylebiz.com is my website. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Velvet Style Biz. Okay. Because I, like I said, I like to be findable. And I just have some really great, exciting things coming up as far as just navigating that virtual event space, because that's still going to continue, as well as starting to incorporate in-person and hybrid events again. And just really helping others that are, putting events to the side because they feel like it's a lot of work. I want to be that person that you can, be that soundboard, that help, So I have some great things. And then the summit that we're talking about, doing a recap. So I want to share my, we talked a little bit about successes, but I want to share about what didn't work, because I think that's just as important. So my website has a free event planning checklist that you can start planning your next event. I always tell people to give at least a minimum of 90 days. So that checklist is a start from if you're trying to plan an event in the next 3 to 6 months.
I was gonna say that's a really good tool for people to take advantage of right now, especially as we go into 2022 and you're looking to plan out your marketing calendar for next year and even first quarter. Doing that checklist now is something that can help you plan that first event that would potentially be at the end of March at this point, or even beginning of March. And so, I think that's a great free tool to grab from your website.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can just start, and then, like you can reach out to me. I do some, consults and things like that. We can really start to navigate your next event, and you can get my expertise, because let me tell you, I've done every event under the sun, so I can tell you what not to do. That way you're saving your time. You know what I mean? Don't spend months planning and then realizing that, I scheduled an event during, a Bears-Packers game. So something like that.
I'll be the first to admit that you've been extremely instrumental with Mel Consulting Co. and helping me plan events, because like you just said, something as silly as, oh, Mel, that's a holiday next week.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I'm like, oh, okay. I just thought it was like the third Thursday of the month. I didn't give it any thought,
Right.
And yeah, I am 100% grateful to all of the support you've given to me in my business and helping me with event planning. I mean, you think it's easy, but it's not. And there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's not something the average bear can just pull off. I mean, you definitely need to work with a specialist, somebody that has the expertise, somebody that like you that's been doing it for 15 years. And I think we always know that you want to focus on your strengths and having a niche. And like you said earlier, wedding planning is not your space, but business event planning is. And I think it's really important that if that's the type of event you're planning, then you don't go with a wedding planner, you go with a business planner. And I think it's really important that that people realize that. So absolutely.
Well, and the problem is too, when people try to plan an event and it doesn't go as planned, they nix it. They're like, oh, it doesn't work for me. Right. So that's why I always say strategy is the most important thing. So let's do it strategically. That way we don't have to, we don't have to get upset when something doesn't work out, because when it goes through plans, it's going to work out. You're going to achieve your goal because we've already set that in the beginning, right? So that's important to know. Don't be discouraged about events when you plan them correctly.
Well, I couldn't say that better as a financial planner. I do something very similar with people's finances and achieving their life goals. So there is definitely some significant proof in the pudding that if you do have a plan, there's a really good chance you're gonna, if you execute it correctly, you will achieve your desired outcome. So I totally agree with that. Well, Tiff, I don't want to keep you much longer since you are down in beautiful Hilton Head.
I know.
You're so kind to take the time to be with us today.
And shout out to my mom for video
back
me.
there. Hi, Mom.
So so we have a beautiful Hilton rental here off the beach, and my parents don't live in the same state with me, so this is a nice time to get together. But in the meantime, she's been a third person in our interview.
Well, she's the reason we're here, right? Well, listen, I wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. I can't wait for you to get back. I miss you. And I'm so grateful for you, Tiff.
Well, thank you for doing this platform. This is great. So thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. All right.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.